Representative Lyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know that we have families waiting and some of us have tea times. But I've approached this whole process from a very unique perspective. And I must tell you that what we have engaged in over the past 24 hours does not happen on the other side of the building. And I commend you all. One of the things that I've come away from, I will be walking away from this chamber with this afternoon, is with deep and abiding respect for you, Chairman Abney, and the members of the Finance Committee. You've done yeoman's work, and I praise you for that. Mr. Speaker, I would similarly like to praise you and the members of the leadership team on both sides of the aisle for listening to what we as members of the minority have proposed. I appreciate the fact that some of what we have offered has been incorporated into this document. In particular, I would cite the refinements of the E911 system. I am pleased that, by and large, we have incorporated a restricted receipt account, lowering fees, as well as breathing new life into the E911 Commission. I'm hopeful that these steps will provide our constituents with the state-of-the-art emergency response system that they deserve. Secondly, I'm hopeful that the newly empowered Auditor General will be able to root out the corruption, fraud, and waste that we saw in proposing our Inspector General legislation. I would commend the work of Chair McNamara and Amore in terms of the education reform that we have approved. I would also note that I'm pleased by the restructuring, the restoration of the funding for the Nonviolence Institute. I also appreciate the removal of so-called scoops. By the same token, I'm disheartened. I'm disheartened by some of our failure to directly and immediately address an agency in crisis, and that's DCYF. I'm also disappointed that we failed to address a chronic issue, and that is the homeless amongst us. I'm disappointed, too, that we have failed to provide DEM with more boots on the ground to maintain and preserve some of Rhode Island's jewels, our state parks, our beaches, and our preserves. As a spouse of the member of the Lincoln Zoning Board, I am also concerned about stripping local rights. We have heard over the past 24 hours that we will address some of these concerns in the next session. As a longtime Red Sox fan, I grew up with the mantra, wait till next year. Hopefully, next year, we will address some of these issues. Rhode Island's motto is hope, and I am hopeful that this will come to pass. Mr. Speaker, I will be voting red due to my concerns over these issues, as well as some of the other increases in fees that we are imposing upon our constituents. In closing, it's been an honor to sit in this chamber, or dare I say, arena. Sitting with you, I have developed an earnest, heartfelt, and sincere respect for you as individuals, as well as for this debate. It's an honor to serve with you in this unique institution, and as a member of the mighty freshman class of 2019, I thank you all.
Representative Canario.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I be marked in the affirmative on, I believe it was 16 and the amendment?
You may.
Thank you.
Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I promise I will keep this brief. I'm not going to be the reason that we don't go home on time. I apologize in advance to my Republican colleagues. I am going to be voting for this budget. Disappointingly, but I will be voting for this budget. As my daddy always told me when I was little, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you can get what you need. And I like to still pretend that he made that up himself. Over the last couple of days, it has been brought to our attention that the way that we've introduced amendments was not the way that the process was supposed to work. That everything was coming too quickly and too much at the last minute, and there wasn't enough transparency. I want to believe that the $1 million that we took out of this budget for a wildly inappropriate venture was the only million in there. I want to believe that. But since I'm not on finance and since I can't very well read these 38-page amendments in the 5 seconds that we have them in front of us before voting, I have to take everybody's word for it. I want to make a promise to my constituents that just because I'm voting yes on this budget does not mean I endorse the behavior with which it was created. I will always advocate for transparency in every level of government, particularly in the budget. And so I hope that what transpired this year encourages my colleagues to look closer at the line items, to ask questions when it's available to us. And I hope that the leadership will answer those questions when we have them, regardless of who's asking. I want to promise my constituents that my yes vote on this budget does not mean that I am any less dedicated to transparency. It means that I am dedicated to Rhode Island having a working budget. And while I did not get what I want, and my community did not get what they want, at least the Institute for Nonviolence got what they need. Again, I will very disappointingly be voting yes on this budget, but I urge my colleagues to pay close attention next year, because I'd be willing to bet that the $1 million isn't the only million. Thank you.
Chairman McNamara.
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, for the past 2 decades, the Rhode Island General Assembly has been focused on phasing out the most regressive tax in the history of our state, the car tax, which burdens working families, the folks that live in our urban core. I compliment all of the members on the Finance Committee and the Speaker and the leadership. Although it wasn't a budget article, there was a proposal to derail the phase-out. Mr. Speaker, I consider this one of the greatest accomplishments of this budget, and I just hope that in 3 years from now, it's history. I would urge everyone to support this very pragmatic and well-thought-out budget. Thank you.
Let's see. Representative Youichi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I, too, echo Chairman McNamara's statements. These are very tough choices, as we learned from the beginning, in the things that we make. And there are a lot of things that concern us on this floor. But this is a fiscally responsible budget that is not leveraging our future. We're not going out on a limb and investing in things that years later will cost us more and more. And while we are often tempted to do this, I remarked to some staff here earlier, you know, in the past, there were some things we would have bid at because federal dollars are there or something that way, and we would have dove in only to have to fix it years later. And I'm proud to be part of a budget process is now looking at that and saying, what can we afford years out rather than now? The next year, as we do this, we have to continue the vigilance through oversight, through our Finance Committee, and watch how monies are being spent and listen to what people are asking for and watch how they're managing programs. I'm very disappointed in one department in general who really was silent, at least with me, is now claiming that we didn't fund them. And they were fully funded based on last year's numbers, yet never reached out to us to talk to us one-on-one about the merits of their program, what they want to do, and then expect to come in at the last minute, literally 2 days before the budget, and rescue things. We can't operate that way. Our Finance Committee really does a tremendous amount of work throughout the year working on these things, and to just come in at the end and try to get your wish list because you haven't done your grassroots advocacy, that's just wrong. So we all have a responsibility to keep our ear to the ground, to talk to finance, to mention it in our priorities, to get these things done. But barring that, we're not Santa Claus. We can't just grant a wish list at the last minute. So I'm proud of the work we're doing today. This is a responsible budget. Good things were brought up. I respect our colleagues on the other side of the aisle and the good points they brought up and the amendments we were able to make to reflect that. and I appreciate the tone of the debate this year, and I'm proud to serve with you all, and I wish you all would join with me in voting on this budget. Thank you.
Representative Canario.
Mr. Speaker, my apologies. Earlier, I forgot to include Article 1 and the amendment that renumbered the articles.
You want to be recorded in the affirmative?
Yes, sir.
And on the amendment to Article 1?
Yes, sir.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chairman Corvese.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's very rare that I would get up to talk about the product, the budget. I don't usually do that at the end of a year, but this particular budget, I really have to give a great deal of credit to Chairman Abney and the Finance Committee and the Finance team, the analysts, all the individuals who've put the time and trouble to craft an excellent budget from what was a very difficult budget originally proposed. And having spent 10 years in finance one term, I can tell you that it is not an easy job to be a member of finance. There is so much detail and so many different perspectives and aspects to the budget that to craft, to come up with what they came up with was a Herculean task. I was especially happy to see this year, as Representative Lyle mentioned, I was especially happy to see the inclusion of the 911 funds. I think that was very important. That was also important to some of the constituents in my district, and I know Representative O'Brien's district. And I was also very happy to see some of the inclusions that were made during the last couple of days. But I felt that, you know, having been here for some time and having voted for many, many budgets, I have to say that from the original product that you started with, Chairman Abney, to what you have delivered, you and the committee and your analysts and everyone who's contributed to the final product, I think that this budget is a really sound budget, a responsible budget for the people of the state of Rhode Island, and I think it certainly is a template for what has to be done next year and the following years. And I applaud the committee and the leadership and Speaker Mattiello for everything that has transpired this year in finance. Thank you.
Leader Shikachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know, request for an announcement, please. I know this is a little bit out of order, but I wanted to say why it's going to be out of order in a minute, but I have a feeling that once we have a vote, this chamber will clear pretty quickly. But I want to echo, it's been said before, but I want to say it again, we have an incredibly talented finance committee that works hard. And of course, we have the best fiscal staff in the country, led by Sharon Reynolds. And I cannot thank her enough for what she and her staff have done, not only with this budget, but every day. Yesterday, it was said we were late, and that's because we, as a body, put a tremendous amount of changes and make them do things and jump through hoops at the last minute. They produce a first-class budget all the time. They do an incredible job. They are definitely under-recognized, and I think it's appropriate to recognize them for everything that they have done and continue to do. And I know that over the next week, we'll be bothering them a lot. So Sharon, again, thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Leader. And if I may at this time, because everyone is going to clear out, I think, after the budget passes. Yesterday, upon a statement that we started late, I indicated it was that I was here at 11, but I was waiting on finance and fiscal. And that was absolutely true. But driving home, I actually felt pretty badly about that, despite the fact that it was very true, and that we wait on fiscal, and we do it every year. It's because of me, the governor, the Senate president, and all of you. Because until the budget is finally baked, as I say, there are constant discussions, negotiations, conversations going on between all of the parties that I just mentioned. So we're constantly making changes, going to the chairman. You folks are going to the chairman, going, and the chairman is going to Sharon, who, by the way, is undoubtedly the best fiscal advisor in the state, probably New England, in my opinion. You know, you're probably my favorite, Sharon. There's nothing that you don't get done. Even when it should take you 3 days, you might be a few minutes late, but it's a few minutes late versus 3 days for the average good, smart person. You're incredible. Your staff is incredible, and that's due to your leadership. I've said this before. Sharon doesn't like me to. Sharon Reynolds doesn't like me to mention it, but I have a say in every employee in this building except her staff. Even though technically I supervise it as speaker, I wouldn't dare even recommend. They're professional because of Sharon. They're constantly vetted. They're constantly made better. We have the best fiscal staff anywhere, and that's because of your leadership, Sharon. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I think you're great. Representative Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I get up in profound gratitude for the budget that we are passing today. I'd like to express my gratitude to the chair of the Finance Committee, the members, and so many people that their opinions impact in the decisions that we're taking today. I want to express my gratitude for the child care industry. We, this year also, moving forward the agenda to impact in the early education for children in the state. I'd like also to thank because we are still funding the ELL education, which is so important for so many residents in the state of Rhode Island. There are in the budget are many things that I feel we have to express our gratitude. When you appreciate things, you open the door to more things to come. I learned a lot this year, even though I'm here for a long time. And I know, and I want to express that each opinion from the members are taken in consideration. And I also know that the budget the next year is also open for new opportunity. So my final statement is, we need to work more closely with more respect and love, because at the end of the day, what we're doing here represents why people elect us to come to the State House. So please keep in mind that we don't fight each other. We just delivering the message for each one of our district. Thank you.
Let's see, Chairman Abney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I promise to be brief. Representative Lyle, you've had enough next years over the past couple of years. We can stop that. And I already missed my tea time. I just want to point out, I know that budgets are priorities, and we all have our own. But I want to point out that 10 years ago, this state did not have an education funding formula that was based on anything but tradition and influence. And while this funding formula is not perfect, this body, both Republican and Democrat alike, and every member in this chamber has a deep interest in making sure that that education funding formula is supported. And this budget in particular is a tremendous budget for pre-K through 12 education. Representative Diaz just mentioned the ELL funding. That categorical did not exist just 4 years ago. The investment that this body has made in public education is a testament to your priorities. I think it should be pointed out, so I'm doing it here today. Thank you to all the membership for continuing to push on behalf of their communities and on behalf of the state. And like I said, there's not anybody I haven't talked to in this body about that formula and about supporting public education in Rhode Island. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Craven.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to rise and speak specifically to not only the efficiency and from my perspective, the miracle of how this budget comes together, but one aspect of it in particular that was somewhat controversial that we discussed yesterday, and that was, we could call it what we want, but it was that which made the Fane Tower be a possibility in the future. I'm old enough to remember when I used to take the Eddy City line down from Washington Park and catch the Smith Street bus under the viaduct, those of you who remember, and go to LaSalle Academy for 4 years. That viaduct's not there anymore. It's a skating rink, and I remember where the old trains were, and the train tracks were in front of the State House, and that's now a brand new train station. And several other areas in this city that I remember didn't exist and that were far less attractive than they are now. I believe that the Fane Tower will be the beginning of another era in this city and in this state. And that nostalgically, I will be able to look back and say, I remember that was a lot across the street from the Garrahy Courthouse. So I believe that we've done the right thing. I believe that any concerns about this statute being something that will be repeated for something far less important to the future of this state will never happen. It has to come before this General Assembly. I think we did something historic, and all of you who are significantly younger than me will someday have the opportunity to say, I remember when. So congratulations, Mr. Speaker, for sticking to your guns and keeping that in the budget, and I believe we've done something that we can all be proud for. Thank you.
Let's see. Chairman Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to note that Environment will be meeting Monday at 3:45, and note the room 326. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Place.
Mr. Speaker, real brief. I was incorrect when I said earlier the buses are shared between the two campuses. That's incorrect. Cranston received the 2 new buses. Zambrano campus still has the old broken down buses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Place, if that's correct and Zambrano has 2 broken buses, please see me next week, and that's certainly an important need. My understanding is that's not correct, but if that is correct, please see me, we'll work that out. Those patients absolutely deserve appropriate transportation. That I agree with you on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be in touch with your office. Thank you.
My pleasure. And that's assuming they didn't get a new bus, which I believe they did. Let's see. Leader Filippi.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the body for a vigorous debate. You know, I always say be hard on issues and not people, and I feel we represented something here over the past 2 days that Washington, D.C. needs to learn from. We have strong debates on policies, but we remain colleagues and friends, and I think that's a great message to send to D.C., but also to the state of Rhode Island, that we can have vigorous debates on issues and walk out of here as Rhode Islanders together. Budgets are statements of priorities. You know, Republicans over the past 2 days, we sought to preserve our promise to reduce the sales tax to 6.5%. We sought to give more frontline workers to DCYF where they're desperately needed. I do thank the Speaker and my friends across the aisle for recognizing the need for certification and that we all could work together to make that happen in this budget. I'm very concerned about what we've done to our medical marijuana program and the approximately $20 million that have been invested in this state by cultivators. I'm very concerned that we're going to put those people out of the business and open medical marijuana up to large out-of-state moneyed interests to come in here and take control of our medicinal industry and potentially our future recreational industry. I'm happy that we've empowered our Auditor General. I much would have rather had an independent Office of Inspector General. However, we do now have an empowered Auditor General. We sought to put controls on that Auditor General to ensure bipartisanship and oversight, and we all will just stay vigilant in the years to come to make sure that that office is operating properly. With the I-195 land, I'm concerned that we gave additional corporate welfare to one developer. And I'm also very concerned about what we've done, the precedent we've set by taking away municipal sovereignty. You know, overall, Mr. Speaker, I feel that this budget double downs on central planning and does not embrace the free market principles that will enable our state to truly thrive. I think we would all do well to remember that the government doesn't create wealth. The people create wealth. And the only thing that is too big to fail is our system of free enterprise. So I hope in the years to come we can re-embrace that principle that has created the most wonderful country to live in and can recreate the most wonderful state to live in. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the body.
Representative Millay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Announcement, please.
Proceed.
On behalf of Chairwoman Williams, I'm announcing that Labor will be meeting Monday in room 135 at the Rise, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. There are no other lights. Before we vote, one more comment. I want to thank Chairman Abney for his countless hours, and everybody on finance, but Chairman Abney for his countless hours. The House of Representatives is fortunate to have someone of his character amongst us to lead that most important committee. In our discussions, and whenever there's negotiations with the Senate, with the governor, Chairman Abney is always there or in communication with me, and I have found that his judgment reflects that of a retired military person with unbelievable life experience. Cannot be replicated. You have no idea how much I and this body relies upon you, Chairman, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you've done for us.